Good afternoon and welcome to Father Scott Pillars, Provost John Pauley, Dean Emeritus Tom Bausch, my Dean colleagues, members of the university leadership, students, faculty and staff, and members of the business community, to all our friends and supporters. I'm Linda Saltenberger, the Keys Dean of Business Administration here at Marquette, and I would like to have your attention for just a few minutes, and then we will begin with luncheon. I'd like to extend a special welcome to University trustees Rona Vogel and, of course, Jeff Joris. We also have actually with us today some prospective Marquette business students, and I'd like to welcome them. They're here to get a preview of what college life is like. Now, this annual event is particularly important to us this year since our keynote speaker, Jeff Joris, is a College of Business alumnus. In fact, we have many alumni working at Manpower who are actively engaged in the life of the college. I've met with Mike and Mike Van Halen and Jeff and Owen Sullivan almost annually since I arrived on campus. Jeff Joris was also the College of Business Administration Distinguished Alumnus in 2003, and Mike Van Handel, the CFO of the company, earned that same honor in 2011. Mike is also a member of our Dean's Council of Excellence. Todd Filter is on our MU Business Administration Alumni Executive Board. And I just learned earlier today that our relationships extend outside of Milwaukee. This summer, a group of business students are going to be studying in Rome, and they will be hosted by the Manpower Regional Director for Italy, who will help them to discover and learn about the European workplace. So thanks to Manpower for all the ways in which you support us. I'd like to give special recognition to Mr. and Mrs. Frank Tometz, our generous supporters and donors. Established in 1999, this annual event brings CEOs to campus every year and is a community event as well as an event for our students. I'd like to thank the members of the Business Leaders Forum Planning Committee, including Frank, Kathleen, and Mike Tometz, George Gasper, Linda Stevenson, Lee Kendall, John Novotny, Sue McKinnon, and Dennis Garrett. The work of this committee has been invaluable. Thank you, members. And finally, a special word of thanks to Peg Bernhardt. She's our Director of External Affairs, and Deb Reeders in the Dean's office. And as you can imagine, they both spent a significant amount of time making this a successful event once again. Thank you both. Now, as you've probably noticed, what's unique and special about this event is that we have more than 140 students here today. And so we have a great balance of future and current business leaders. I hope our students take advantage of this opportunity. I hope you brought your business cards and you do have an opportunity to network and to talk with people. But we really appreciate the fact that they are able to join us. Now, for some logistics, some of our students will actually be coming in from their 11 o'clock class and possibly going to a later afternoon class, so they might arrive a few minutes late and depart a few minutes early. We're very grateful that Mr. Joris met with 2 economics classes earlier today. I guess he was up all night studying, he said. And apparently he did quite well. So at this time, I would like to invite Father Ron Biganowski of the Society of Jesus to come up and give us an invocation.
For this Business Leaders Forum, Manpower Group's global values of people, knowledge, learning help celebrate Marquette's College of Business mission of relevant research, innovative learning, social responsibility, and global perspective. Such commitments were first articulated in our land by John Winthrop to his pilgrim community in 1630. He urged his congregation to follow the counsel of Micah, to do justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly with our God. For this end, Winthrop goes on, we must be willing to abridge ourselves of our superfluities for the supply of others' necessities. We must delight in each other, make others' conditions our own, rejoice together, mourn together, labor and suffer together, always having before our eyes our commission and community in the work, our community as members of the same body. That kind of commitment in the Gospel of Matthew translates into the immediate experience of the King saying to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. A stranger, you welcomed me. Naked, you clothed me. Ill, you cared for me. In prison, you visited me. Whatever you did for one of these least, you did for me." Let us then bow our heads and pray for God's blessing. Good and gracious God, in the midst of our personal and professional commitments for all people locally and globally, we pause in gratitude and hope. We thank you for all the ways you bless us and care for us through our families, friends, colleagues, community, and our nation. We especially thank you for the ways you have been in the midst of our neighbors, quietly, steadily, revealing the full life you have prepared for all your children. We ask for faith to identify your guiding word in our experience, for readiness to learn the full dimensions of your creative project, for courage to choose more boldly the greater common good. Finally, we ask you, Heavenly God, to bless us, to bless this food we are about to share. You give bread to those who hunger. Give hunger for charity and justice to us who have bread. We ask this through Christ our Lord, and let us all respond by saying, Amen.
First of all, on behalf of the College of Business Administration and the Graduate School of Management, I would like to express our appreciation to the Gold Table sponsors who are listed in your program. We are deeply grateful for their support, as well as to all of those who have worked hard to make this event happen. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have a very strong relationship with Manpower Group, and we certainly appreciate all their support of business education here at Marquette. Before I start some introductions, I wanted to just talk a little bit about an even deeper bond that I feel that we have with their company. Knowing the leadership and the mission of Manpower as I do, I believe that our two organizations, our business college and their company, understand, promote, and value the dignity of work. One of the most important things we do in the business school is to prepare our students to be contributing members of society by providing them with the opportunity to have challenging professional careers and by creating men and women for others. An important part of the business education is a core curriculum that provides our students with cutting-edge knowledge and the skills they need to succeed in the workplace. As Jeff will note in his talk, the rapid pace of change in a global world is challenging workers everywhere to constantly update their skills. And so in addition to preparing students for their first job, we really feel that it is our obligation to teach them to become lifelong learners, to help them to find and filter information, to make intelligent decisions, and integrate and implement those decisions within an organizational context. Marquette's strong liberal arts education, along with our business core curriculum and our advanced business courses, help students in their chosen field, accounting, finance, supply chain, or IT, to name a few. But beyond that, we focus on developing the whole person. So each course is designed in some fashion to help develop students who are critical thinkers, ethical decision makers, and those who will add value to their company, their industry, and their profession. I think this aligns nicely with the Manpower Group message that organizations are successful if their people are successful. And if their people have the tools to be innovative, creative, both collaborative, and I think even disruptive in some cases. And finally, in addition to skills and character development, our most important mission as educators is to prepare our students to be socially responsible global citizens. That is, individuals who give back to society, who share their gifts with others, and who steward the environment with gratitude for all they've been given. Once again, I think our two organizations have a keen sense of social responsibility to both our local and our global communities. So I'm looking forward to hearing Jeff's message about how to navigate what he refers to as the human age. He and I will spend some time after his talk delving a little more deeply into some of the things that he's talked about, and then we will entertain questions from you. I'll try to serve as moderator for those questions, and if you look around the room, you'll see that there are some microphones set up for the Q&A session. Since our time is limited, we will try to ask you to be brief in your questions and be mindful of our students and their needs as well. So it's now my distinct pleasure to begin this part of the program by welcoming the 23rd president of Marquette University, Father Scott R. Pallars of the Society of Jesus.
All right, thank you, Linda. Thanks to all of you for being here on this great event for Marquette University. It is a real privilege to welcome Jeff Jarris here, a man who lives the highest aspirations and ideals of Marquette. Father Biganowski raised the bar a little bit by quoting a 17th century writer. I teach 17th century literature, so I feel obliged to at least respond with a quote from John Donne that I think says much about Jeff Jarris and his career and manpower and the work that they do. Donne writes that on a huge hill, cragged and steep, truth stands, and he that will reach her about must and about must go. And what the hill's suddenness resist, win so, yet strive so. What Donne is after here is exactly what Jeff Jarris has done in his career and what manpower does for our community and for the global economy. That is, they work very hard. They strive to reach a truth. The truth is that economic prosperity is an engine that drives all of us and provides success for people who live in a world that needs to be made more gentle, more just. It is with great pride that I welcome our friend, our trustee, Jeff Jarris, to Marquette today. Thank you, Jeff.
Well, now I feel inadequate because I'm not quoting from any... It's hard coming to a university after you live in the real world for a while. Thank you, Father Pallars. I also want to, we've had a chance to meet a few times, but I think it's great to take a little bit of time out and say, welcome to our community. You will make a big difference in our community. Marquette is a big part of the community, and your energy, inspiration is going to make a difference. So thank you very much for coming here, really. So anytime you get ready to go to university, I get that doggone recurring dream. You wake up, you have no idea whether you have your clothes on or not. You walk into a class, and the finals that day, and you didn't study for it. So I've been suffering with that dream now for about a week in preparation for this. And then, unfortunately, the dream came true. Jeff, we'd like you to attend a few classes. International Currency Markets, Econ 40044. I never took a 4-level class in my life. Macroeconomic analysis. And oh, by the way, these guys just also did a whole bunch of stuff on what leading indicators, should it be PMI, OECD, all the stuff that my fellow Marquette grad, Mike Van Handel, normally covers in the investor presentations. So I actually did wake up to that dream, and I think that now I can be done with that dream because I actually think I made it through the class without having studied for it. It's great to be back. It's great to meet students. It was great to sit into the classes and see some of the intensity of the questions. At no better time and at no different time is it more important than now. Those students in those classes may be confronting some of the most difficult job markets that we have ever had before. I graduated in 1983. It was a tough labor, tough hiring environment, not like this. The education that Marquette gives beyond what it is just to be really good at those classes is going to be an important part, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we move forward. When I sign up for all of these, I just can't help, so please, I'm going to indulge you. I have to give a commercial of the organization. That's what I'm paid to do. It will only last about a half hour. And we have booklets on the back, and we have signage forms to use our services. I say it because being in Milwaukee, with 85% of our business outside the U.S., sometimes you don't know who we are. And to put in perspective some of the things that we deal with and how we do, and the core, as Father Pilar says, what we talk about, the core of our business is that work is honorable. The core of our business is finding somebody a job brings them dignity. Brings them dignity that they can bring that check home, as our founder said, put it on the table and say, we can eat this evening. So we are a mission-driven company that is a New York Stock Exchange that is for profit. And we try to blend that together in the most effective ways. We do that all over the world. We finished this year with $23 billion in sales. Most of our business, as I said, 85% of our business is outside the U.S., and we do things that people don't understand. We train 10 million people a year for no charge. We interviewed over 10 million people and put 3.5 to 4 million people to work, depending on what year. We have the largest training company in the world and coaching company in the world called Right Management. We do $3.5 billion under a brand called Experis for IT, finance, and accounting, and engineering, and we do that globally. We do many, many things in our organization because what we're seeing is the world is under turmoil. The world is in a challenge that it has never been before. And when I first took over as CEO 13 years ago, if I could quote the unemployment rate that comes out on the first Friday of every month, I was some kind of genius. Because the labor market really wasn't talked of in the same way. If you read the FT this morning, read the Wall Street Journal, I took a look at it. 3 of the 4 front articles on the first page and A2 on the second page was labor market skills mismatch. Where's the market going? We are living in an area where companies and individuals are at times at odds because of this difficulty, because of these confusions that exist within the labor market. We try to make some sense out of that, and it is extremely difficult. First of all, it's not just about size, though we like size. When we look at our business, we currently have today about 650,000 employees on assignment today. In China 2 years ago, we had 20,000 people on assignment per day. Today we have over 130,000. The goal by the team, somewhat influenced by me, is 1 million people on assignment in less than 5 years. This is tremendous growth. This is the kind of growth that you have to do it with a human way. You have to approach things in a humanistic way. We do a lot of solutions business, and we're going to continue to do that. So when I get and have an opportunity to speak at something like this, I look at all of the opportunity that I personally have had to have this job, and look at all of the different people I've talked to, from labor ministers to prime ministers to people on the shop floor, recent graduates. My inbox is filled with asking for resumes and CVs. I guess maybe I shouldn't have said that with about 150 students in here, but I can give you somebody else's email. And no, it's all part of the times, and clearly it's that kind of difficulty that we live in. But I love my job because of the perspective that it is allowed to bring. I'm going to just bring you through just a few things. A little bit of a history lesson, and when I was thinking about the history lesson and knowing that there were students in here, so please don't think that I'm some old guy up here talking about 17th century literature or anything like that. So I'm only going back to 2001. How's that? Prior to 2001, there was something that was absolutely incredible. Do you remember Y2K? Oh my goodness. Y2K. Planes were going to drop out of the air. Everything was going to stop functioning. Stay in your house. Canned foods, powdered milk. It was going to come to an end. I actually think what it was the revenge of the IT contractors who were trying to juice up their bill rate in order to fix it. There is something really important that will not be turned back that happened during that time. Every major corporation in the United States, in Western Europe, and in definitely in Japan, put in the most sophisticated ERP systems, enterprise resource processing systems. Why? They had to redo their systems anyway, so I'm going to put in the best ones, the ones that allow me to know everything that's going on, everything that's moving in my company. Nothing happened on Y2K. I was in London at the time at the Millennium Dome. It didn't collapse on us or anything like that. Had all 4 kids with them, so I didn't want that to happen, of course. But then came 2003, or right before that, the dot-com boom. Remember that? Everybody had a .com after the last name. It just didn't roll right. Manpower.com. It didn't go right. But the fact is, then you had the .com bust. Then you had the downturn in 2001, and that too was critical. That was the first time you saw globalization really taking place. Why? Remember what happened in Y2K. I got all the data. I know what's going on. Now when I'm in 2001 downturn, I can know where's my weak spots. Where should I be putting things? So what happens? Offshoring and outsourcing. Largest time of offshoring and outsourcing. In the end, it will absolutely benefit the U.S. because we as a U.S. business community are further ahead in understanding the dynamics of international versus global. How do you do that? How don't you do that? But the fact is, there was an exodus. It was painful, but it bounced back. 2003, things started coming up. We were short-circuited in 2008. 2008 will be down in the history books. It was a seminal downturn. It was the first global downturn in the history of the world. We first figured out, holy smokes, we are all connected. Why can this happen here and it just happened right here in France? Then it happened in Italy. Then it went over to China. Don't believe the GDP growth numbers in China in 2008 and 2009. They were suffering. It was going down. It was a global downturn. Companies turned global. Now there's an undertow. If companies are global, what happened to people? People became global. Jobs became global. Immigration became much more known, particularly in East. The EU expanded their zone. Why did they put Eastern Europe into it? They needed the people. Because they needed the migration to go back and forth. 2008 was frenetic. 2009, frenetic. It created pressure. Everything was on the end. I was able to attend the World Economic Forum in Davos in 2008, and there was serious conversation with very smart people that said, what are we going to do without capitalism? It's dead. It's done. My point is that the effects on people, the effects on companies, the effects on educators, on universities, is if you just look at that, if you just look at that short history test, it says the pace of change has gotten so great that if we actually think this new normal is going to go back in time at all, you might as well just try to figure out how to get your loincloth, go into the middle of Montana, and hunt for your own food. Because you know what? It's not going that way. It's getting more sophisticated. So as we look at this, there are some major trends that I would like to talk about. 4 trends. First, talent mismatch and demographics. Immensely important. Demographics in the United States are not the best, but we're about the middle of the pack. They're actually pretty good in the United States. How do you like to be in Japan? Worst demographics in the world. And one of the worst immigration policies. France, 40% of the entire state-employed population will turn 62 in the next 4 years. Do you think they had to raise that retirement age from 60 to 62, which was the strikes last summer? They have to. Things are changing out there that are not reversible. Demographics are not reversible for at least a generation or so. This is putting pressure on the labor market. This crazy thing called a talent mismatch. How can I have unemployment rate, let's call it 8%, 9%, 10%, and then not be able to find people? That's because companies know exactly what they need. They put in more into the job description, more specificity, require more, and we don't have enough demand, and without as much demand, they can wait 2, 3, 4 months to hire. Talent mismatch is here for a while, and as things move faster, it's going to make a big difference. Second, individual choice. In large companies, mid-sized companies, one size fits all. Here's my benefits plan. Here's my education plan. Here's what's going on. Dead. One size fits one. It's multi-generation, different ways of learning, virtual work, crowdsourcing. Have you heard of crowdsourcing? Look it up, Google it. It might take your job. Crowdsourcing basically says, I need something done, I put it on the web, 25 people compete for it, they put in the bid, they put in the price, you say yes, it's delivered a week later, costs you $2,000, and it was done in Pakistan. Happening all over the place. Individuals have choice where to work and how to work. Individuals have voice that says, I'm not working for a company that doesn't have, in the true depths, a socially minded way of doing business. If you are not socially minded as a company, is if it's all about might and size and not about sustainability, you're not going to attract the brightest people. These trends, which we identified in 2006, accelerated in the 2008 downturn and continued to accelerate. Customer sophistication, that's a pleasant way to say complete drive down of margin. How many of you would buy a television and never go on the internet to check a price? How many of you would go on the internet, actually put the same model, and you press a button and it says the exact same television of what price it's going to be? We do that all of the time. It's the Walmarting, and I have nothing against, but it's the Walmarting. It's people driving towards value. What does that mean to the labor market, to your talent? Less margin, more pressure. Less G&A, higher productivity, more technology. This is a trend that is moving, and we'd all like to stop, we'd all like to slow it down, and maybe there can be some slowdowns, but you'd rather get into that fast-moving stream than outside of the fast-moving stream. So that customer sophistication is so critical, and it has reduced the life cycle. One of my favorite stories is a phone booth that was invented about, maybe 3-4 years ago. It was a phone booth presented at the Las Vegas show for nightclubs and entertainment. The phone booth kind of looked like one of those British phone booths that was kind of fun, and here was the idea. At all these nightclubs, you could never call home, particularly if you were a guy, and say, I'm at a nightclub and I'll be home right away. So what you can do is go into this cone of silence, make your phone call, and say, okay, I'll be a couple minutes late for dinner or something's happening. Tested marvelously. They started building it. 6 months later, obsolete. Didn't sell one. Company went out of business. Why? Text. There was a shift from calling on your mobile phone to texting. My children won't pick up the ring. It's like, pick it up. If he's calling me, he's a nerd. He's got to text me if it matters. The point is that compression of life cycle, our whole view is, what does that mean to the people? What does that mean to the engineers that invented this? What does it mean to the people that put it together who thought maybe they might be able to produce this for 3 to 4 to 5 years? They're not going to. Customer sophistication is driving it. And then there's a tremendous amount associated with technology, which is the fourth trend. Technology has made a major shift. That major shift has moved from being the center of attention to the enabler. How I get work done, how I use my iPad, my iPhone, the this, the that, all incredible tools. Most of our business is done outside the US. I get emails and texts all time of the night. It makes business go differently. In addition to that, you ever hear of something called Glassdoor? The students will figure it out or not. Glassdoor basically has complete inside ratings of what your company or university is like. All done by people who have worked there. That technology brings transparency, which brings more transparency along the way. So those 4 trends accelerated greatly during the downturn. And as a result, we are in a very different spot. We are in a spot which we call, and we announced at the World Economic Forum in Davos in last year, is what we would say is the human age. It is the ability to say there was the Iron Age, Industrial Age, Information Age. Each one of those ages were based on how those tools, how those mechanisms were used to further society. Those are all known. Information is still important to us. Technology is still important. But it's the human age. It's innovation, ingenuity. It's capturing the ingenuity that will be the difference. It's not going to be the technology anymore. Arab Spring was all started by Facebook. If that was done 4 years ago, the headlines, Facebook starts Arab Spring. But the technology's baked in. It wasn't Facebook starts Arab Spring. Youth unemployed starts Arab Spring. So these changes and how it affects talent and what the human age means, which is to absolutely be operating differently, is critical. I'm now looking for something that I want to read. It may not be here, and I've got Father Pilar's remarks up here. Quoting a 17th century. What it basically says in there is there are some things that we have categorized as human age shifts, epic shifts. Things like a company was defined by its might. Now it's defined by its agility. Employment was defined on how close you could sit to the corner office. It's now defined on how much you can, how you can contribute to the organization anywhere in the world. These shifts of how you now manage, being a human age manager, is about collaboration. Collaboration is not about holding hands and singing Kumbaya. It's about trying to figure out how to do more with less, use resources in a different way. We have conference calls and teams from all over the world. We struggle with it. So clearly what we see is that the human age is bringing on challenges to us that we would never have expected. There's a few forces that are going on top of that. Force number one, the inversion of how you think about resources. 10 years ago, what was infinite resource? People and natural resources. What was finite was information. It's completely shifted. We have finite human resources. We have finite natural resources, and we have so much information we don't know what to do with it. The term we call is infobesity. We're just filled with it. We don't know what to do with it. It just fills you up. That's an inversion like we've never seen before of that. We also are seeing a bifurcation of growth. OECD countries are in a mature growth mode. Emerging countries are not. What does that mean to talent? What does that mean to management? How does management become more global to capitalize on what might be happening in the Asian markets or in Brazil and others? So however you thought of your management, however you thought of your people, you can't just make a jump from here to there. You have to do it carefully. But at the end of the day, if you don't start practicing now, if you can't bring forward that notion of talent in the human age, you will not be in existence the way you are right now. Doesn't mean you go out of business, but you may find yourself on a slow drain out of business. It's easy to do. It's respect the individual, drive out the innovation, and think about how do I get more from the people and engage them in a different way. So those are my prepared comments. And Linda will have some questions.
Am I live? Well, thank you. That was incredible and inspirational, and I have more questions than I have answers right now. You know, Manpower has been at the forefront of this kind of research from my perspective for a long time. But your New Age theory, I think, is guided by a lot of different trends.
Right.
Can you talk a little more about what those trends are?
Yeah, when I talked about those world of work trends, they actually work for not just talent companies, they work for manufacturing companies, they work across. And what we do is we work with McKinsey, we work with lots of others, but we work with 450,000 clients and millions of employees and bring them together. The issue is those trends that I talked about, those four trends, have profound effect on universities, especially individual choice and how they want to go there. So I think the view is how we took those trends and moved them into the human age was really because that history lesson of in 2008, that was a different downturn and a different recovery, because in many ways we're still in the recovery. So those trends and how we look at them, very scientific, but also kind of amalgamating in an almost a alchemy sort of way to come up with them.
So we have a lot of students in the room this afternoon, and I'm wondering what your insight into, kind of a look over the horizon might be for them. I mentioned earlier that I always tell the parents of the freshmen that whatever we teach them is guaranteed to be out of date by the time they graduate. And what we're really trying to do is to teach them how to learn. It's very lofty and very ambitious, but we're all challenged to think about exactly what that means and how we do that. Mm-hmm. So from your perspective, what is the next thing?
Well, let's look a little bit about this inversion and difference in bifurcated growth of OECD and emerging countries. Go to China and sit in one of their schools. Go to China and talk to some of the companies there of what the expectations are of how they want to succeed. Our graduates, for the most part, are far ahead of those in China. My point is, you're graduating from a fine university, consider it only one step, just the beginning. If you cannot embrace lifelong learning, your jobs will be ended without you ending them, with somebody else ending them. You want to be on the one who says, not only have I learned from your organization, I've learned externally. And that's a lot of hard work. What you like to do externally is go out with your friends, read books, read 17th century literature. You can do lots of things. But sometimes what you have to do is to read something that gets you further in your own career. So lifelong learning is critical, and we tell all of our people that, and yet it just doesn't seem natural. So here at Marquette, when you think about critical problem solving, and those are what it's about, because your job is going to change so much. What isn't changing is your mind in how you solve problems. The technical things need to be added, but you got to have the mind to solve it. So absorb it and know that you've just begun learning. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to go very far.
The other thing we struggle with is global perspective. And I think our students nowadays are more mobile, at least when they're young. They seem to be perfectly willing to have a first job or second or third job abroad. What else do you see in terms of adding value to their experience to really do a deep dive into that global perspective?
Everybody has different career paths, and you can kind of have what we would call in-place jobs where you don't have to know much about global, but more and more of the jobs are going to global. We run a global organization. Less than half of the people reporting to are American. Less than half the people reporting to me are actually living here in the U.S. I had a chance to live in Brussels for a while, but frankly, at the end of the day, that isn't what makes it. What makes it is your ability to learn, your ability to listen, your ability to understand their perspectives of it, and then to add context by knowing that the language that you are speaking to other people, it's their second language. Simple things like that, and then building experience up. Going to visit, I hate it when we send somebody on an expat and the housing that they choose is in the middle of an expat village. No, shop, school, all of this stuff. Get out there and learn it, because right now, whether we like it or not, the target is on our back, not on their back. They're after buying our companies. They're after coming into our companies, and they're coming in with a deeper sense of global by having that whole mindset almost indigenous in how they were brought up, where we're a bit more insular.
So maybe I'll open it up to questions to the audience right now. And as indicated, there are microphones on either side of the room. Dr. Fisher, do you mind? He's getting there.
I was just told I have to speak Northern. I'm not sure I can at this point. Jeff, thank you very much for coming, and particularly thank you for spending time in the classroom. The tentacles of manpower in terms of the needs, the concerns, the issues of business is incredible. So here in education, at least in the U.S., is under pressure. Can't read out of high school, whatever it may be. Do you have thoughts on the higher education model, and in the spirit of where it should skate, where should we skate in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, how many professors are here? Just kind of want to know my audience. In fact, Father Pallars and I will be together next week. I'm hosting a meeting next week at our building to be provocative in where should secondary education go. And I've been on a task force for about 2 years with a group in Washington, D.C. Look, there's many things in there. When it comes to universities, if you look at the debt load that is being put on the kids, how things are incentive on a credit system, all of those things are hard to get at and need to be get at. I'll keep it simpler than that. There is, in my mind, what is considered, my simple mind is there's real good education, and then there's how do you add on to that education. And we can't forget that really good core education should not go away. And there are some that says, oh, we don't need all of that, and we don't need the basis for that. It's amazing how many times you draw from that. What I would say, though, is that the university systems are not built to be as agile as business. They probably shouldn't be by definition, but you shouldn't be 100 yards behind. So there's something between there. And I know many professors and administrators get hooked into part of business, but it's not just hooking into business. It's coming back and creating an iterative model for education to make it more relevant. So when your student graduates, they can graduate with not only the vocabulary, but some visceral understanding of what is new in today's world and still have the basis of education. So I absolutely believe that the university systems from top to bottom have a hard time being iteratively educating because it's hard. The curriculum is fixed, it goes. But how you can do that, yes, you can bring me in to speak for one. Maybe at best, everything I said today will be remembered until tomorrow. What's more important is the constant about what is being needed out there. How could I put that in the context? So for me, I think universities have to be more iterative in how they educate, and that goes along with what I think students need to do, which is lifelong learning. Why don't students go back for a tune-up? Why aren't they back every 2 years on a 1 month? And keep rotating between businesses and education. I think we're not working together well enough. We're not figuring that out because things move so fast, yet business is moving fast on its own, almost oblivious to everybody else, and education is trying to keep up, and what we need to do is to mix them together so that it actually kind of circles together a little bit more. That would be one of the views I have on education.
Yeah, I really like that concept a lot, and I just want to add part of our challenge is, and I see Gene Simmons over there, who's the director of our graduate programs, just when it seems as though that need for higher education and continuous education is the greatest, companies are under tremendous financial pressure, and so a lot of the support that they might have given in the past to those students whose salaries are compressed, so it's a very difficult and challenging situation for that student who might want to get their MBA.
Yes, and I wish I had a better answer for that. I started my career with a company that sent me away for 1 year to learn more than what I learned from out of a university, and now they do it online for 2 weeks. So margins compressed, which go back to individual choice, also means individual responsibility. There has to be more individual responsibility. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it's a factor of it. I also think that the work that you've done in the community and others is businesses will give up the money. It's a little bit less money, but they will give up the money easier with a faster time to value business case because things move so fast. If I put in a center and then I'm going to have this and then 5 years from now something's coming out, I may have sold that business 5 years from now. So I think it's that quick time to value business case that you can get business more involved, but business is going to be much more cautious than ever before because of how difficult their margins are.
We have another question.
What would you say are the key leadership characteristics for global leaders today?
So the question was, what are the key characteristics of global leaders today? I think it's more than global leaders, and I'm not just saying it because I'm sitting in a Jesuit institution, but it's serve, don't be served, is key. When it comes across the globe, they want to know that they have a leader who understands. It's having a team around you who isn't all like you. Diversity is a nice thing, both from ethnic and age and where it comes from. But diversity creates better decisions create more money. Very simple. And I think too many global CEOs are want to have the comfort zone around them of all of their own, and they can't do that. The other thing is that you have to find out enough about what motivates. At the end of the day, the core motivations are the same. It may be how you get there. So in China, they're very paternalistic and they believe a lot of certain things, but then you've got to be able to manage it a little differently. You have to understand that. Listen, keep your mind open, and as a global leader, also be signed up that a 20-hour day is not unreasonable, because you've got conference calls at 4 in the morning for Europe and you've got them at night for Asia. So you got to sign up for being on their time, not just them being on your time.
We have a question over here.
Hi, Mr. Juras. Nice to see you here. I'm Irene, and I'm currently pursuing the Master of Science in Human Resources here at Marquette Graduate School of Management. And my question is, well, like the student like me, I'm about to graduate in May, and what do you think the most important thing for the human resources student to prepare now to be the human resource professional in the future? And the second question is, I'm an international student from China. And how do you think the international student can shine themselves in the U.S. job market? Thanks.
So there's a couple questions there. I'll do the HR one first. Clearly biased, but we get to talk a lot to HR people. There's a lot of true blocking and tackling, real mathematical sorts of things associated with HR. Making sure comp and benefits are right, what we call the technical part of HR. And there should be some good firm foundation on that. But frankly, what I spoke about today, about energizing a workforce, how does one size fits one and still fit with the culture? How do I have managers become coaches? How do I have people become disciplined entrepreneurs? That's where the world's going, and HR should facilitate it. HR has been relegated to the third level part of senior management. Only now are they starting to be C-suite officers. Only now are they reporting to CEOs. Reason is my goodness, what I talked about is hard. So you've got to be able to bring insight to that. When we talk about lifelong learning, where this is going, what's generating the energy in the organization, you have to be the voice for that. And the voice is not just a voice of, wouldn't it be nice? The voice also has to be at the appropriate time is, that would not work well. You've got to have the courage to use your voice through that critical thinking to say, I'm sorry, but there is a generational difference here, and that's a big part that HR can play. On the second part of your question, clearly you're more valuable in a company who does business internationally than one that doesn't. But even that one that doesn't, they have suppliers, they have clients that are international of sorts. You want to be able to make sure that you bring what you brought up as a diverse background, living and being educated at a certain level in China, and bring that and relate it to the company, because companies are looking for people like yourself. Mm-hmm.
Do we have other questions? And by the way, Jeff, you can ignore our lunch table conversation.
Okay, all right. Well, I still have with me my dispute with Ed Inderreed that he gave me a B+ instead of an A on something. and Ed, what was your comment? You're lucky you got the B+. I thought the drinks at I don't know, it wasn't. Marquette's a funny place in some ways, and I had some juxtaposition because I started at University of Minnesota, which is a great institution. I came to Marquette possibly for all the wrong reasons. I just ended up landing here and did some things. What I find most interesting about Marquette, it's not what you learn in a class. It's not what you learn in the curriculum, though the curriculum has to do with it. It's somehow you leave different and you don't know how they did it to you. And And you don't know it when you leave right away because you don't have to use that stuff necessarily. So there's like a cache that's been formed. There's a cache in you that is stored in there. And you bring out this experience that was holistic, but you were just, at least for me, I was just looking at these siloed things and brought together. So for me, Marquette was without sounding corny, it is building a man for others. It is what it's about. And that wasn't very fashionable before. Back in the days when CEOs were celebrities and CEOs were about might, it was clearly not fashionable. But in today, where it's more of a servant leader environment, all of a sudden it actually means more. So clearly there were some great classes, and I have some fond memories of some great professors, of what they've taught me and how they taught me. But I think you can get that in a lot of places. I think it's that thing you can't hold on to that seems to come together. And I'm a trustee, and I went there trying to figure out whether there was a secret formula that they actually had on that. And I think what it is not necessarily a secret formula, as you know, John, but more of just an attitude and a way of doing it. And to me, that's what I left with, and that's what's the most valuable.
We have time for one more question.
Can you expand on your comments about capitalism probably dying, and we have to operate within all various governments? And
so my comment on capitalism dying was by a bunch of wonks, professors who attended Davos. I don't believe capitalism is dead. I believe capitalism has got a major speed bump. You've got to review it based on what are the alternatives. I think capitalism is great, but capitalism has gone bad in a lot of places, gone bad possibly here. But my comment on that was that capitalism in and of itself, particularly in the Davos way, there's a lot of of those, right? You have a lot of influence from governments that are not there. The other comment I made was it will be about talentism, not capitalism. And in that form, capitalism wasn't capitalism as much as it was capital. And while for many small businesses, capital is still hard to raise, for large businesses like us, we could have more debt on our books at a very reasonable rate, LIBOR plus just a little. So it's not access to capital that's going to drive our business, it's access to talent that's going to drive the business. So the main point behind the whole human age is the competitive landscape will be won on your ability to innovate, engage, and drive the right talent and be agile along the way, not as much the injection of capital. And again, I don't have my head in the sand. If you're a small business and you're looking for some additional capital, it can be pretty tough these days. But overall, that's really where my comment was going on that.
And one last question. We're about to go to a faculty meeting in the business school and talk a little bit about innovation. How do you build innovation into your culture at Manpower?
Innovation is one of our 3 values, and if you read deep under the innovation, it's about 3-4 sentences long, is that innovation comes from the field. We cannot possibly think of ourselves as being smart enough in Milwaukee to do that. So we have 4,000 offices, 35,000 employees, and just a couple hundred that sit in the location. Our job is to harness all that innovation, figure out what could be scaled, industrial strength, sent back out, modified, and then it becomes a circle that increases its speed. Every once in a while, we'll stumble on an innovation, but most of the stuff that we need in our company has been invented in one of the 4,000 offices. We haven't found it, or we discarded it because we didn't use enough creativity ourselves to say, oh, but that kernel of that could be used. So we have to stop. And again, we're in the service business, not in the manufacturing business. We don't have an innovation department with a locked door and retina scans. We've got a bunch of people out there who work every day, come up with great ideas. Our headquarters obligation is to capture that and make it better and make it scalable. That's our innovation strategy.
Terrific.
Okay.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's time and attention this afternoon, and let's give our speaker one last round of applause.